Videotape number 21, Track A, Auditing NT, Catching Greg Hoglund.
Good morning. My name is J.D. Glaser, and a little bit new at this, so bear with me. I have a bunch of slides, so I'm probably going to go pretty quick. I come from a little microscopic software company that I own in Portland, and let's see where we're at. I have to figure out which slide this is. All right, I'll do it this way. The need for auditing, this is a quote from Information Security magazine that I felt was pretty accurate. Personally, from the type of things that I see, I've worked at Intel, Hewlett-Packard, I see much more internal problems than I do, than I see outside problems coming in. So I put this up there. You're probably all pretty familiar with this, but just a starting point of where we're going. This is a slide, a little bit confirming that. Stephen Northcutt sent me this slide, something that he experiences a lot. Kind of the idea behind this is that basically if you can be sneaking your intrusion auditing, you know, what you're trying to do is capture information. If you can grab information and you find out how something's going to happen. Like, let's say in the auditing department, if you knew how a particular stock deal was going to go down or something, and you knew how the outcome was going to be, you'd be buying you could buy stocks or something on the outside and, you know, legitimately make money. So just a note on that. Okay. Windows NT has a lot of great built-in audit facilities. However, they don't have a lot of good tools for looking through those logs. So I wrote this little tool called NT Last. Totally snarfed it from the Unix Last. Any Unix people here will be totally familiar with it. However, it's pretty new to NT people. I don't know a lot of NT people who do a lot of actual reading of the audit logs. So if you've ever tried and you use a little GUI event log viewer, you might be a little bit frustrated. This is something I wrote that grabs a little bit more information, puts it together, reads a little bit more information. So we'll go over an overview of that. I'll introduce it. The reasons I wrote it are speed, cuts down my search time dramatically, automates it, eliminates a lot of hassle. Going back and looking through NT audit logs, not usually too happy with matching up the hexadecimal IDs, so it helps out a lot there. So these are the reasons I wrote it. Hopefully if you use it, you'll feel the same. The biggest thing that I wrote it, or one of the things that interested me the most was I didn't have a way with NT, there was no way to match up log on times with log off times. So that's one of the things that NT Last does, is it goes through, matches log on times with log off times and gives me some kind of time frame that I can look for file activity. And it's the only way I know of to do this under NT. So. How it works, it just basically reads the NT audit log, puts the information together. The three things that it helps me do that I find faster, it does faster than with the event viewer, is quickly displaying who logged on and when, how long they were logged on, logon failures, and most specifically, it helps me really clearly see what machine they came from. Usually it's pretty hard to tell if someone's connecting to your remote shares, where they're coming from. So NT-Last does that pretty easily. I'm going to give some shots of NT-Last here, and you can see it. But one thing I wanted to bring up really quickly is in all the things I've seen, this is a really common error. I've seen this really widespread. Some of you may think this is a no-brainer, but I see it so often that I wanted to bring it up. That is this situation. When you're setting auditing on Windows NT, you'll go to this audit dialog box. This is the particular this document, and you select the users that you want. You select the attributes that you're auditing for. You click on the first name. You set it up. That looks great. You hit the OK button, and you go on to your next task. The only problem is that it looks like you've set those attributes for the first 3 guys, but you haven't. What you end up with is this. Nothing has been set for the domain admins, and nothing has been set for domain users. So when you're doing this on a wide scale, you basically now have a bunch of nothing. So you think you've set up an audit system, and when you go back and look at this a couple months later, you have actually no information recorded. The bummer about NT is it's got this great thing to do this microscopic auditing, but there's no way to go back and double check your work. Unless you actually go back, double click on all of these things, you have no way of knowing whether this worked or not, and that's really kind of a drag. I didn't have a slide up here for it, but I wrote a free tool that's on my site. You can grab it. It's a little command line tool called Audited, and it will go through and it will read all of your files and let you know whether or not the audit bit's been set and what attributes you're auditing. So you can run it, and it'll really quickly tell you what actually is being audited. So it's a good way and a fast way to double check your work. I didn't have a slide up here, but if you go to my site, www.ntobjectives.com, you can find it. Okay, probably one of the biggest questions I get about NT-Last is why doesn't it work? To work, auditing has to be already turned on, and you have to have events in it for it to read. It doesn't do any good to run NT-Last against an empty log, and you have no idea how many emails I get on that. Okay, here's a little bit about setting it up. These are some of the switches. If you run this at the command line, NT-Last -F-I grabs the last 10 logon failures interactively. NT-Last -F-R -N25 grabs the last failed remote logons, telling you how many people tried to connect from some other machine to yours. The third one, NT-Last -I -not administrator, shows you the last 10 interactive logons besides administrator. You could substitute administrator with any user, whoever you want to exclude from your list. And one of the most useful things is this last one, NT-Last -M-F-R, grabs the last 10 failed remote attempts against another machine. So if you're sitting at your console, you can use this to scan your network and grab all the other machines. So okay. Failures are indicated by a single value of 528 that also has a little lock thing on it. But when you're looking at really large event logs, it's pretty hard to look through and grab all those things. Also, it's hard to, the little lock doesn't always help you distinguish, because there's other failures that show up as a lock and you don't exactly know which is which. So then you have to go look for the 528, and I find that a bit painful. So Personally, the dash F switch is, I just live with that thing. Okay, here it is in actual use. I ran this against a box, and what it did is it grabbed all the remote failures, generates this list. This is a partial list. And so kind of what you see is it's going through a couple different people, 3 at a time. The last one got cut off. But if you look at the time sinks, they're all very, very close together. And so kind of what this shows, this is an example of some automated password guessing. And what it looks like they're doing is they're not trying to guess too much at one time. They're not trying to trigger out any lockouts. You guess a couple of these every day, looking for some common dictionary words. If you ran this for a month, it stands a pretty good chance of squeaking by without anybody noticing. So anyway, this switch is pretty useful for helping you try to look at information like that. Pretty much when I do my work, I just redirect it out to a file so I can be collecting my results. That was one of the other things that caused me to write a tool, was saving stuff to a file. Then I can load it into Excel or something if I want to do more analysis. One thing I think NT-Last is pretty good at doing is finding oddball situations like here. I find it's easier to view information this way than it is through the event viewer. For instance, it helps me to see each person logging on from their own machine. You have like the Renfield guy from his machine. However, you notice it's pretty easy to see all of a sudden we have this Renfield guy logging on from Susan's machine. And that's odd. That may be normal. It may be an administrator, maybe someone who has a password, who's legitimately doing some work, connecting through net use or whatever. Or it may be odd. You also notice the time. Was the admin there at 12:47 a.m. in the morning? So then you have to decide for yourself. But at least it helps you see it. At least I find it helps me see it a lot easier. Okay, here's something else that I feel this tool helps me see really easily. If you notice, starting down at the bottom, you see Thomas logging on from his machine. You see Brian M. logging on from his machine. You see Thomas logging in from a different machine. When you get towards the top, all of a sudden you see Brian M. logging on from this machine that no one's ever heard of. Okay, well that's a bit odd. So if you look at the timestamps, you'll see Brian M. logging on April 22nd at 2:02, and then you get this oddball log on, 15 days later. So on the 2nd, April 2nd, the password hash went out over the wire, and now 12 days later, someone else is logging in. So it's pretty strong evidence of a sniffed password, and that could be about the time it takes for the password to fall to like Loftcrack or something. So I find this is a pretty easy way to help me kind of see these kinds of problems. God, I don't even know how many people have Loftcrack running at Intel, but okay, here we're establishing a time frame. Using NT-Last -R -U username. Now that I've noticed that this guy's logging in a non-legitimate way, I want to try and find out what he's been doing. So I grab a list of some of his accesses the day I see him logging on these days at these times. Now I have something that's worth going after. Now that I have an actual time, I kick NT-Last into verbose mode, which is using the V switch, and now I get my time frames. What this does is, in the middle of the slide here, you see the log on and log off, and now I have a 35-minute window where this guy was on the system. So now I at least have something to look for. Maybe if he hasn't covered his tracks, I'll find some clue or something. So I was really frustrated that I wasn't able to do this. So this little bit right here is probably pretty much the reason why I wrote this thing. Once you actually get a time frame, you want to try and start looking at the first possible activity. So I'm going to go after the first day, and I'm going to try and see if I get, with any luck, if I can see what he did on the first day, what he might have left for himself, and then look at the final day he was here and see what he left. So I'm going to try and go from the first activity to the last activity. You also have to be prepared you may not find anything. NT is a pretty noisy operating system. The advantage of that is someone who's trying to clean up their footsteps, NT is so noisy that they may forget something. The disadvantage is it's so noisy that looking for stuff is somewhat problematic at times. So when you're searching for files, you have to rule out normal system file activity, and there's really, in order to do that, you really just kind of need to spend some time examining your system so you know what normal file system activity is. I use Handle X from the sysinternals guys. It's a really, really great tool for seeing what processes are running, what files are being accessed by what DLLs. And it's just, I don't know, very, very invaluable tool. Okay, without using any specialized tools, just basically making use of NT's built-in stuff. Here's 3 commands that I probably never see anyone in the NT world do too much. But that's the dir/t: C switch, the W and the A, and these just list out the creation times, the write times, and the access times. So I'm going to try and find something that was created or accessed during the time that this guy was on the system. And again, with luck, we'll find what we're looking for. Oh, sorry, I clicked through that last one. Probably one of the, I see people do this a lot of people aren't aware of. If you're looking through your files, don't use Explorer. It's not your friend. If you're trying to look at a file in Explorer and you right-click on it and you look at properties, it changes the access time to when you just clicked on it. So that destroys your evidence of access time if that's what you're looking for. So here we get lucky, and we see that we have a file that was created during the time frame that guy was logged on. So now we want to go examine that file. If you spend some time experimenting with the files, like when NT is first installed, you may be able to have like some list or some comparison of going back and looking at what was first installed versus what there is now. This is assuming, of course, you haven't installed the super hip tripwire to do all these changes for you. So if you look at this file is called winoldApp.exe, and there is no such thing. However, there is a legitimate file called winoldApp.mod. So you can see this is very similar, and it really doesn't look out of place. If you're looking through a list of NT files, there's a really good chance that you're going to miss this. There's a lot of files, and it's pretty painstaking to go through all these things and try and sort out these differences. So anyway, this just kind of shows something that's out of place, but doesn't look out of place really. I probably couldn't live without grep and strings. So if anyone doesn't know this, Cygnus.com has free versions of strings and grep. You can grab it. Running strings on this executable basically lists all the API calls. This is a partial list. So you can see that this particular exe has the ability to connect back out and do some DACL checking, so it doesn't really look like a normal system file, so pretty much looks like your culprit. Okay, this is just a reminder of different types of problems that you run into. You're just not always going to find the exact time frames you're looking on. Either the system may modify the times, the user may clean up after himself. So you just have to deal with those problems the best you can. Luck does play into some things a little bit. Okay, this is really kind of what I wanted to talk about. This is a pretty interesting list of some access times, and it shows that Windward ran. What's missing from this list is the msidle.dll. Right. msidle.dll is the Microsoft GUI hook that runs in all of the Office products, and it's loaded whenever you load any Office product using interactive logon and you're working with it. And what it is, it's a hook that detects keyboard activity, so it knows when the GUI is active, and if it isn't, it just, at that time, Windward says, okay, the user's not doing anything, I'll do my background tasks. If you run Windward remotely, pop it up through DCOM, this DLL doesn't get loaded. So what I know from this list is that someone launched my Windward remotely, and you'll never see it unless you look in the task list. So what I have to do now is I have to go back and look at my DCOM permissions. I know at least 100 professional administrators, and not one of them knows how to set or really anything about DCOM permissions. It's not in any book, and it's not in any of the security papers I've read. The Navy NT security paper. Yeah, go ahead.
There's a whole bunch of information about it in the ISS scanner hall.
You must be David LeBlanc. We had some heated email last week, so I hope he's forgiven me. Cool. Make that information more available because it's not very well known. Okay. A lot of people just aren't aware that Microsoft Word can be popped up in the background without them knowing it. It's really easy. If I have the right permissions, I can sit on my machine, I can pop up Windward on your machine, and with Word Basic, you really don't need back office. You can, with the exception of popping the CD-ROM in and out, you can pretty much do just about anything you want with Word Basic. You can pretty much have total control of the file system. The trouble with finding DCOM permissions is that you don't look in the usual places. I don't know many admins who are familiar with DCOM config or have the tool that developers have, OLAView, for looking at things, or knowing to go to the classes key in regedit and checking out what's there. Okay, the other thing is that DCOM permissions, you're not going to find anything related in user manager perm. So if you're used to going there, if you suspect someone may have been added to your list that you don't know about, so you want to go to user manager, check out your list and the permissions that various people have, it's not going to help you. There's no information listed there. So, and that's really the only place that most NT people or NT admins know where to check. So. This came out a little bit distorted. What you're looking at, this is OLAView, and it usually comes with the developer's kit, and it gives a list of all the COM applications that are on your machine. Over on the right, can you guys see that? Is it readable? Okay. The key here is the launch's interactive user been set, and really very few people know what that means. So what that means is that Microsoft Word is set to be launched as the interactive user, so whoever is logged on at your machine at the keyboard. So if the administrator is logged on as at the keyboard, and it's pretty easy to find that out, you can just do a netstat A, or MVT stat A, sorry, find out that he's logged on, and then you can launch WinWord, and it's now running with administrative privileges. Here is, let's see, here's the launch permissions, the activation permissions, access permissions. Here it shows the group that's been accessed or added to give themselves permission. So what this means is the Aurora domain guests can launch this program, and when it launches, it's not going to run as administrator. So now there's a pretty large hole in your NT system. It can be easily closed. It's not like a security weakness. The problem is that there's only two places you can see this information, either in this tool or go in the registry and look at it yourself. But just not a lot of people know how to do that. So here's just kind of a list of how someone could look at your machine in a different way. Someone's sitting on a remote box. They do an MBT stat, find out when the administrator is logged on. You can remotely launch WinWord. It's not going to run under full admin privileges. And it pretty much serves as a backdoor. If this was left set up this way, and let's say as an administrator you suspect that there's some password compromises, so you go through and you change everyone's password, they're not going to be able to log on to, what you just did was you just prevented them from logging on to your shares. However, they can now log in through DCOM, and with Word Basic, they can still read all your files. So you need to be aware that this is a potential backdoor. Okay, I think this is what Dominic was talking about, and this isn't really any great discovery. It's documented Win32 hooking process. However, I think there's an advantage that I think there's a larger majority of Unix admins who are also programmers, where that isn't really true for NT admins. I've never seen this key listed in any security documentation whatsoever. But what this key does, it's blank by default. However, if you list a DLL in app_init_DLLs, it will load that DLL into every interactive GUI process that pops up. I've never seen it used by any legitimate app. What are some of the common large-scale backup programs or whatever, but I've never seen it used. So if you're looking for evidence and you're trying to see what someone's done to your system, you might want to check out this key. If there's something there, it's very possibly a problem. The interesting thing about this key is that when NT starts, it will read this key, and the value is saved in kernel mode. Whenever it's requested by any user 32 programs, that value is read and the DLL is loaded. However, you can erase the key and you go back and look at it, and you're not going to see it. So someone could use this to launch their process, delete it, cover their tracks. The DLL is still going to load, and it's going to be harder for you to find. So its effect stays in place until it's rebooted. Hopefully someone will put this in their guidelines. Another thing people aren't very aware of are hooks. Hooks allow the loading of DLLs into every GUI process. And this means a keyboard-clipboard interceptor. An example is PGP. A lot of people aren't aware that PGP hooks a DLL into every process space. And again, Handle X is a really, really good tool for seeing this. I think the next slide shows that. Oh man, that's awful. Okay, if you could, is this very clear to you guys? It looks horrible here. Okay, what this shows is, I think this is, Outlook was the one I highlighted. But on the blue bar you see the PGP DLL in there. And it shows it in WinWord, so you can see that this is injected into WinWord, and that's how PGP does its really cool, copy your text to the clipboard. However, it's really easy to write a hook. Anyone can do anything. I mean, it's if you're trying to, it's much easier to do it this way than to try to write the traditional Unix Trojan type deal. You can just write a hook. It'll inject in. It'll intercept all keystrokes. You saw that other program. The other program could send it back to you, and there you go. This is kind of interesting because it shows command.exe running in the same situation as all those other programs. However, you do not see the hook DLL listed. The interesting thing about this is it forms a small amount of protection. If that was a hook DLL that was doing some type of spying, I can run command exe and do some command line stuff, and in this particular case the hook isn't intercepting my call, so that's worth noting and worth possibly using. Okay, a lot of other people don't really know about Gina replacement. This key right here shows the value of the Microsoft Gina DLL. It's responsible for doing your logon. A lot of people are very surprised to learn that you can add another value there and replace it. The legitimate value of that is if someone wants to do like, a thumb logon or something, that's how they do it, to bypass the standard logon and now do like some type of IID. The bad use of that is that if you go and you look at this and there's another DLL there, you need to investigate it because you need to know what that DLL is doing. Greg Hoglund has the rootkit.com site, and one of the things that's on there is a Trojan DLL. Basically what it does is, it's really, really very simple. All it does is, it's a kind of like a pass-through DLL, and it forwards all the calls to the original Gina. It's loaded by this Win key, but as a password comes in, it just captures the password, saves it to a text file, and then calls the original DLL. So, and again, you can erase the key value, so it's a little bit harder to detect. And I think it's a little bit more insidious than an actual Trojan. The one thing about Trojans under NT is they don't seem to work really well because NT is so fragile. It just kind of breaks really quickly. Unix functions really, really well with tons of Trojans. You can install rootkit 3, have all these commands Trojan, and Unix just keeps running. I don't think you're going to find that happening under NT. Okay, this is something I consider pretty important. NT is a very noisy system. However, this is one place where it is incredibly quiet. The NT repair directory. I think it ships by default with everyone read writes. On my personal system, the last time this directory was touched was 5 months ago. It usually only gets touched if you run the NT backup repair thing, and you go on to make. I know a lot of people do that religiously every day. So, if you're looking at this, there's only two things that really touch this: the loft crack password dump guy and the legitimate Microsoft repair disk thing. So if you go here and you see that this access time is recent, it's pretty safe to assume that it's been read by loft crack. So you might want to check that out. I gotta get something to drink. I'd like to talk about Tripwire for a second. Gene, if you have a phone call, white page Jersey phone, come back in 5. This is one case where over-security kind of works against you. Because when you run, you want to run Tripwire, most people want to run it and, have it do everything, super cryptographic, nothing on this system is going to change. I'm going to detect it, no one can subvert it. Because of that, Tripwire reads the file, which means it modifies the access time. So, and it doesn't record the access time. So Tripwire is not going to Tripwire is going to catch changes, but it's not going to catch someone reading this in the password dump. So one thing you might want to do is back off a little bit, or maybe have 2 scripts, and have one script that runs that doesn't do any cryptographic signing, but just checks for access time changes. And then you could catch that. This is by far the most common attack against NT, I think. Everybody has loft crack, everyone knows how to do it. We had one afternoon, I think every machine at Tripwire was running loft crack, and Gene was so intrigued by that, he had beer sent up so we could all watch. And I'm embarrassed to say my password fell in 3.2 seconds. I thought candy bar names were really good. I had to switch to bubblegum. Okay. Thought I had some more stuff. You guys can read through the appendix. It's pretty self-explanatory. I thought I had a slide in here, and it's not, so I apologize. There's probably one other thing that a lot of people aren't aware of, and that is NT has these things called system watches, and you can set directory system watches, watch for file activity and such. But one of the parameters you can set there is a remote machine that you want to watch. So if you're able to get initial access to a machine, you're scanning through it and you see, wow, this guy's got he's been really good and he's got all his important financial data PGP armored. And you say, wow, I'm going to copy those files. I'm going to spend the next year trying to see if I can break it. But you really don't need to go to that much work. What you can do is just set a directory watch, and when the guy unarmors his files, it's going to set the trigger. It's going to let you know immediately that they're now in the open. Then you just jet over there, grab a copy of the naked file, and you're set to go. Saves a couple CPU cycles. I think that's pretty much all I have. Hey.